Hey everybody, it is late at night and I am Norman. Right now, as of the time of this recording, I just got back from an over week-long road trip. My family and I did Route 66 from New Mexico all the way to the end of the Mother Road at the Santa Monica Pier. I brought these watches with me. Tonight I'm going to go over each piece that I brought, as well as an interesting revelation that I had in taking all of these watches out on the road through desert, all the way to the ocean. So let us begin. I had a really tough time deciding which watches I was going to take on this trip. There are so many watches that I absolutely love right now in my collection. So I decided I didn't have a ton of room in my luggage. We were doing carry-on. So I used these cases and carefully tucked them into my luggage. I didn't use a roll, but by bringing both of these, I get 2 watches in this case, 3 watches in this case, and 1 on the wrist. When we left, I had the Movado Museum on my wrist, and I picked this one just because it's such a nice, easy grab-and-go watch, and I find myself wearing it surprisingly often. So I grabbed this and wore it on the airplane. In this case, I have the Juvenia watch that was gifted to the channel by JP Davis. Absolutely gorgeous watch. The amazing vintage aesthetics was just perfect for Route 66. And being new to me, I've been dying to wear this a ton, so it had to come with me. Also in this case, you can recognize it from the bracelet here, the Serica. So I needed to bring a couple tool watches because I figured there would be some pool time or hot tub time, and I knew that it was going to be hot and sweaty, deserty and whatnot, so I wanted a couple watches that were tough and can handle wetness, dampness, submersion. And this was one of them. Such a fun look to this watch. It makes perfect sense that I'd be bringing it on Route 66. In this case, we have 3 watches. My other tool watch that I brought was the CWC G10 Sapphire. I had to bring this one because it has a decent amount of water resistance. It's just a tank, it's quartz, so you can just pick up and go. And it would look absolutely brilliant with all the Hawaiian shirts that I brought. And it did. Field watches are just perfect summer watches, so I had to bring this with me. Next up, the Space View. And I brought this one solely for its fun factor. It's quirky, it's space age, it's vintage, perfect for Route 66. I think I wore this one day on the trip. I kind of forgot about it later on. Whoops. And last up, I brought the Olympos. The mystery dial. Again, it's vintage. It's fun and unique. And that's kind of what I was thinking would be good for a trip like this. Just super fun pieces that kind of fit the character of Route 66. All the amazing signs and old hotels that are just so much fun. Well, so are these watches. I wore this one a couple times. I just love this watch. And by the way, this is a Dan Henry case. And it's super handy for traveling if it's not going to be beat up too bad. I have no idea where I got this case, but it has come in handy a couple times as well. So when our trip began, I was wearing mostly the dressy watches. I wore the Juvenia in the desert, and yeah, it got pretty moist on the wrist. Very sweaty out there, but it looked absolutely amazing. I'm glad I brought it and wore it. I didn't really wear these watches. Like I mentioned, I kind of forgot about the space view, and after I put the museum away, I didn't really think about it either. I wore the Serica one of the days on the trip, and that was perfect. I think we were doing a bit of hiking, and it was upper 90s, totally hot, and this piece is really comfortable on the wrist. When you're sweating, you don't really notice it so much. The CWC I wore early on, however, near the end of the trip, I found myself wearing the CWC exclusively. And that was really interesting. The weather was really hot throughout this entire trip, and after a while I just didn't feel like dealing with that sweaty feeling. So watches like this, with NATOs, you don't really notice it so much. The sweat kind of gets absorbed in the strap. Same with the Serica. You just don't even really feel that your wrist is all sweaty and gross. That's the one downside with dressy watches that I find, is you can feel when you're sweating and stuff. But this watch just kind of became invisible on the wrist. And I noticed at the end of the trip that I was wearing it every day and hadn't really even pondered swapping out watches. And I realized if I had to boil down my collection to just one watch, I wonder if it would be the CWC. It's so easy to pick this thing up and go, and it's so tough. It looks so great. Yeah, it's 100% utilitarian. It wouldn't do as a dress watch, but every other purpose, this just kind of fulfills that. So I really had a chance to bond with this watch on that trip, which was pretty cool. So there you have it. It was a super tough choice, but these are the watches that I chose to bring with me. And it's so strange that by the end of the trip, the only thing I was wearing was the CWC, and I didn't mind. Thanks for watching.